Going live. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Backcountry BSing from my basement. We're doing these live now.
I love how we've only actually BS in the backcountry like twice.
I know. Yeah, these started. We did these in the woods.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of equipment.
Well, we just used our phone.
Just use a phone? All right.
Yeah. Today is a fun one. We're going deep into science today. So on the show today, we have a good friend of mine, a good friend from the graduate school days, Dr. Richard LaFountain, PhD, on loan to us from The Ohio State University. Go Bucks.
I don't know if we're supposed to disclaimer like most of my thoughts may not be able
everything
to,
Rich says
it's just my thoughts. I don't want any trouble.
The purpose of Rich being here today, so if you watched a couple weeks ago, we had the Backcountry Foodie on here.
Yep.
We talk a lot about fueling for backpacking, food for backpacking, that sort of stuff. And Rich has a PhD, and his research is all surrounding the ketogenic diet. So that's what I'm calling you an expert on it.
Wait, your whole PhD is based on keto?
It's like keto is a very significant player. It's basically our intervention was a training and ketogenic diet intervention. So we did it in like military affiliated individuals.
So even more pertinent to backpacking is with an exercise spin.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So
we call them tactical athletes.
Tactical athletes.
Should we call us backpackers as tactical athletes? So,
no. No.
So I know there's we've talked a little bit about the ketogenic diet. Before we get anything, I'm going to have Rich talk about what that is here in a second.
But we got questions about that after the Backcountry Foodie.
Yeah. And I just want to talk to Rich about it. He prepared some scientific-based materials we may or may not put up on the screen to support his points.
We'll see what happens.
But
anything works for me.
So Rich, before we really get anything, I want you to just kind of explain to people listening and watching, like, what the hell is the ketogenic diet?
All right. Yeah, happy to do so. So ketogenic diet, it is a high-fat diet for short, but generally the way that you would actually go about kind of trying to accomplish the diet or trying to facilitate the diet is it's going to be a low-carb diet. Generally, anything around 200 grams or even 100 grams is kind of a little bit arbitrary where you cut low carb in terms of a threshold. But
it's on 100 to 200 grams?
Somewhere in there.
Really?
There are some, so depending on if you're going on guidelines and stuff. So the American Dietary Guidelines say that you should be getting at least about 45% of your calories from
carbohydrates.
Yeah. So
those bastards.
Yeah. So that's like the low end.
That's the bread industry.
Yeah.
So theoretically, anything technically sub guidelines could be considered technically low carb.
Okay.
But in a lot of cases, if you're going to start trying to differentiate and figure out what is it, what dietary paradigm does paleo fit with or keto? Or you're going to start doing some more specific kind of cutting of macros. So for a ketogenic diet, usually you're going to be in the range of 50 grams per day or less. I did watch the video or the YouTube you guys posted with the Backcountry Food.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I remember you talked a little bit about keto, and I remember you talked, you made a joke about is roughly maybe 2 slices of bread a day.
Right. That's 50 grams, right?
That's going to get you pretty close to 50 grams for most people. So it does, excludes a lot of food products that we're commonly eating.
Yeah.
In addition to that, you kind of can go further, and usually you start with carbs, try to nail that, try to get in 50 grams or less a day. This can be impacted by your training or possibly your backpacking or activity levels, and then from there you're going to next focus on protein. So you're looking at 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kg reference.
So how many you gotta just tell me
how
many
much
grams of
steak
protein?
is that?
So for example, in the studies that we do, usually depending on a person's weight, but if we just kind of assume like a normal sized person.
Sorry. You see how much better that sounds?
It does sound better. I mean, I'm new to the microphone game. No one really records me when I speak.
You're doing good.
So yeah, for someone that's like a normal average size individual, you're probably looking at 100 to 150 grams protein per day. It's not
okay.
Yeah. If you're looking for weight loss or if you're really trying to bump those ketone levels in the blood up, you might cut them, down below 100 grams a day. But that just, depends on the targeted endpoint of that diet.
So one thing I want you to explain is like why the hell do people, other than weight loss, like why do people go on a ketogenic diet?
Okay. Yeah, weight loss. You hit on that's probably
That's
the primary
main one.
Yeah, everyone wants to look good naked.
Yeah.
Even if you're in the middle
That's
of the
true.
woods. Yeah.
That's true.
So people are primarily doing it for weight loss. Now I'm going to just jump into a comment that a
Get in
bunch of
here.
people said.
Yeah, go for it.
So once you achieve your targeted weight loss, is there research yet to show like how sustainable staying on the diet is? Is that good for you?
It's a great question.
That is a very good question. Also commonly something we get from our, papers that we publish. We are reviewed on that constantly. So something that we've seen with the ketogenic diet, for the most part, the literature started about 100 or so years ago with epileptic patients.
Right. I knew that's the historical basis of this diet,
yes.
right?
And I mean, back way further than that, I have a timeline slide that might work for this. It's one of the first, maybe slide 2.
Would you like me to put this? Okay, here we go.
You could try. I don't know if it would be that helpful, but you can at least get an idea.
There you go.
So if you kind of look at like throughout human history, definitely the guidelines were not adhered to generally as like the standard food throughout most of human history. So if you think about 40-ish thousand years ago,
you got human at 40,000 years ago?
It's probably like something that we would call similar to a humanoid, some kind of humanoid type critter that might eat like we eat, and agricultural revolution happened.
You just have human food consumption for 35,000 years.
Just about. I mean, so this is like this is just a rough slide to get the ideas out there. But for most of humanity, if you actually look at that and back through anthropological data, there's a paper from 2006 where they were actually kind of showing that if you were to do your best to look at the remains of humankind and whatnot, it's probably more of like an even split between the macronutrients, and it was absolutely impacted by geography.
Like, so you're saying if we go back to 40,000 or 20,000 years and we pull, I know it's going to be heavily dependent on where you're living.
Yes,
geographically. But if you averagely pull somebody, it's the macronutrients, so carbs, fat, and protein would be split evenly.
Somewhere in the range of like 30 to 35% of calories from each of your macros. So you have the 3 macros: fat, carbs,
I didn't
and
think
protein.
carbs would be that high back in the early days.
It depends on where you live.
Right.
If because tubers, like any kind
Fruit
of like
too.
Potatoes or root vegetables, those were pretty widely used.
But wouldn't that have been like only started when civilization?
Farming. Well, people ate
off?
tubers and stuff before like
roots and tubers. People were eating
before
for a long time.
Mesopotamia.
This is
okay.
I mean, this is absolutely outside of my wheelhouse here.
Do we need an anthropologist?
We need an anthropologist to call in.
Yes.
So definitely I've looked into some of it just to get a basis for like where keto started.
Okay.
So started within the literature and within clinical community about 100 years ago with epileptic patients.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they were on the diet, to answer your question, about 6 months to a year, a couple years, even more than that, depending on how successful the diet was. Because the diet was effective, incredibly effective for some of these epileptic patients. Even so much that was, they were dropping off their medications.
Do you want to talk about why it's effective? Do you know?
I don't know specifically why,
Right,
and I'm
but
not actually certain that there is, we know exactly why keto works. But basically, what keto does is you're decreasing glucose in the bloodstream for the most part. You're kind of stabilizing it. You're decreasing insulin and you're increasing ketones. And the thought is that some of those neurons or some of the cells within the brain and the neural structure are a little bit hypersensitive in some people to like both glucose fluctuations and higher glucose levels. And by having those ketones there, you kind of supplant some of that glucose being fueled to those cells, and as a result, that you don't have kind of some of that hyperactivity or seizures.
It's not because I didn't know this. I thought it was because the brains are burning ketones, but it sounds like it's because it's not burning glucose. We're nitpicking here.
I guess, that is. I mean, it is one in the same.
I thought the ketones had like a magical effect on the brain, but maybe it's just not having the carbohydrates there.
I don't know that I would say it's
the
ketones are magic. I would more say maybe the glucose
carbs suck.
No, not necessarily.
In your scientific background, is the ketones are magic? Is that in papers? Is that published?
I mean, you'd be surprised. There's some interesting.
We're gonna get
sentences.
there. All right, so to I forget where we are in history right now.
So we're we're well into kind of like I kind of stopped this line here at 2018. And you can see that physics, biology, those were just examples of, where they came about. It was somewhere along the conversion from BC to AD, and they've been around for a long time. If you contrast that with nutrition research, 1700s, maybe 1800s
I
was
gonna
our
ask
first
you, that's the
documented
first
nutrition
ones?
research.
Okay.
Where we started identifying things. And when it first started, in terms of nutrition research, it was a lot of it was like vitamin C and scurvy and people, trying to make it across the ocean, and they would have all kinds of problems because they weren't able to store that kind of food in terms of like the vitamin C containing foods for those long voyages. And they would all, have scurvy and all kinds of stuff. And what they ended up, it was more like they found the cure first, and they figured out with like citrus, lemon juice, that kind of thing, they could get rid of the scurvy. And it wasn't until, that was in 1700s-ish, late 1700s. 1800s, we found out like, oh, it's vitamin C. That's what we've actually, supplemented in the diet, and that's what we've been able to fix. So a lot of this data in terms of nutrition, and that's also a very controversial topic, anything related to nutrition, part of that is due to, I guess we have,
biases.
Well, part of it's, absolutely there's bias, but then also like the cultural stuff, the geographical stuff, the personal preference, like, you get super fit and lean and you're eating, I don't know, 500 grams of carb a day, and you're just thrilled with it. Someone comes along, it's like, no, 50 grams a day or less, and that's it. That's the best thing to do. You're upset now.
Would you say, I always say, like, most people, you'll know the answer to this, like, if you're just a regular human, 300 to 500 grams of carbs a day?
In terms of
like how many grams of carbs is a regular person eating?
Like on
average, like what happens? What happened? Yeah.
I'm trying to get people like you're cutting your carbs by tenfold.
It's a significant cut. Yeah. Tenfold, like you're saying, probably in the range of 300 to 500 grams a day is pretty standard for like a relatively healthy person.
Yeah.
A relatively healthy person?
Yeah. Relatively healthy. Yeah.
It's a lot of carbs, dude.
Someone that's a little bit less healthy probably might exceed that a little bit. And each person has kind of this individual, carb tolerance threshold, if you want to think of it. So that's why, some people are destined to at some point get diabetes, and they think it's kind of unavoidable, but it might be something you can do. And like type 2 diabetes, that's by and large it's 90 something plus % of all diabetics in the world are type 2 diabetics.
Yeah, I believe
and that's a lifestyle disease. Mm-hmm. So you can do a lot about it, including, and that's kind of the other area. I guess it's a segue you could consider. So from epilepsy and that kind of stuff in, early 1900s, 1920, we could then think of, diabetics, insulin resistance. That's kind of been the other area where ketogenic diets have been explored more heavily. Right. And in that case, we now have data 1 to 2 years in type 2 diabetics where they've been able to do a ketogenic diet, basically virtually guided. And there are some people that are, extended past that 4 or 5 years, but the papers aren't out. The scientific data is not published yet, so it's not accessible. But it's the short answer to your question. I know we kind of went.
It's all right, man. That's the point of this.
We went all around, but the short answer to your question in terms of like, is it sustainable? It's absolutely sustainable, and it can be healthy. There might be some people that, maybe when you have to be very careful with type 1 diabetics. Yeah. They don't have insulin, so ketogenic diet can be unhealthy or has to be like very well monitored. But for the most part, everyone can do ketogenic diet, and if they want to sustain it, most of it is between the ears. Like, do you like it? Do you want to do it? In that case, you can keep going. If you don't like it and you really enjoy, bread, pasta, pizza, all the good things in life like that, then maybe you're not really interested in keto at that point, or your motivators aren't there. So, like, if I was type 2 diabetic, I would be keto basically till the end. Right. Yeah. And I would probably not be a diabetic as long as I remained keto. Yeah. So, to me, I'd rather do that.
So that was a very good overview of the diet. I want to talk. I think you might maybe talk a little bit about the military study, but I do want. Or do you have some more?
Did we do a full blown background introduction?
Yeah, we probably should do that.
We skipped over that.
It's not interesting, but I'm happy to try to provide what I can.
So I'll give you a little one, and then you can fill in the holes.
Yes, sir.
We should have done this at the beginning, I guess. Good call.
I like diving right in.
We were ready to go. We had a lot of questions.
I'm a keto nerd.
Rich, you're a postdoctoral research fellow.
I'm not quite a fellow. I'm just a postdoc researcher. Yeah.
Most people don't. People listening probably don't know what that is, but
fellow means you did better work and got some kind of funding that was on your own. Okay. I still I'm a parasite. I rely on people.
Rich is originally from upstate New York. Shout out to Brockport. And he did his master's and his PhD both at Ohio State in the what department are you guys called now?
Human sciences is what we're called now. Yes.
That's your department?
Department of Human Sciences, which is a huge department.
Right.
Covers everything from like, I don't know,
Okay.
fashion design to nutrition,
Right.
exercise science. So, Human Sciences Department and Program of Kinesiology. Obviously, heavy nutrition emphasis along the way.
And something we probably won't talk about, Rich, of what I know about you, his doctoral work, he did a lot of really cool MRI imaging, cardiac MRI imaging.
Yeah.
Which is very cool.
Yeah, the tale of how I ended up doing what I do is, I guess, interesting.
Well, let's
I
share.
I mean, it's basically I have a couple focuses, and I try to weave them together when possible. Back to undergrad, I did a project for my, like, whatever my senior project had to be, a research project in my case. I did a military study, kind of just investigating, wasn't quite CrossFit. It was called, some kind of TC 3.22. It was like a military acronym
For like a
code, which is kind of like a high intensity interval type CrossFit training versus kind of the standard calisthenics running that the ROTC kind of had been doing their own investigation. I just collected data for them. So my military interest has always been there. And then got to OSU. My research was more cardiac diagnosis, like the diagnostic processes associated with exercise testing.
I was going to have you see if you could dig up the images of my heart.
I can do that.
I know. I was going to put them up on the screen.
They might be on this computer, which is down here.
I was one of Rich's test subjects.
Yes,
It's a good looking heart.
Mr. Schill and I go way
it's
back.
It's pretty cool. All right. So undergrad, you did some cool military stuff. You started grad school at Ohio State. You started doing cardiac MRI imaging in relation to exercise, and then what did you get into?
From there, I've never really dropped off the military interest, and Dr. Volek ended up at OSU, and it kind of coincided right as I was switching from master's to PhD focus. And in that kind of transition, he was generous enough to kind of take me under his wing, and I've been working with him since. And obviously he's low carb ketogenic diets.
Yeah, and if you just Google Jeff Volek,
yes,
just Google him. He's got like 50 books on low carb. I mean, he's a huge, great guy, cool guy, and he has a ton of research on low carb. So you started working with him, and that's how you got interested in low carb.
Correct. Okay. Yes. And come to find out, there are a lot of people that are interested in low carb, but there's also he refers to it as a target-rich environment in terms of like almost anything you can think of probably should and needs to be studied sooner than later in low carb.
Yeah.
Because for a while there, basically when the guidelines kind of came out around 1960, low carb research fell off pretty hard.
Right.
And it was kind of like if you were doing low carb research, you're kind of a heretic and maybe on the outskirts of science. Didn't get a lot of funding, so you didn't do a lot of research, and as a result, there wasn't a ton going on. There was kind of a dip, and there's a ton of interest now. It's kind of a resurgent. There was kind of like Atkins, if you guys remember.
Yeah.
From, 90s, 2000s, early 2000s.
Yeah. When you think of low carb, you think of Atkins.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was using low carb and ketogenic type diets to treat people for a long time. And the research has kind of progressed from there. And obviously some of his research and some of his techniques were kind of, messed up along the way in terms of like the tabloids and how you actually do the diet. It's not just meat and cheese. Pepperoni and pickles. It's like you actually eat food and you eat non-starchy veggies, and that's probably the more preferred way to do it. And there's a whole, like, if within the ketogenic diet, you can do like a whole foods based ketogenic diet where you're doing a really good job. You're getting, working at getting all your macros.
You can do the trash diet.
Or
steak.
You should look at his pantry.
Hey, no. I was going to bring that up. I'm doing this the right way now. I am. So
the taco chips.
I got the Quest protein chips.
Okay. Yeah. So that there's right. So within that you can do. So I've had friends and I've done keto obviously numerous times. My wife really likes it. She did actually for over a year at one point.
Oh, nice.
Because she has migraines and like
that's supposed to help with that. And I get migraines too.
Yeah, it seemed to help her tremendously. But either way. You can do the whole foods base, right? With like,
there's some
if it has a label on it, nutritional facts or anything like that, you don't even bother.
Man, there's some good questions coming.
Really?
In.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to derail us. So we'll work through some of these questions.
So what I'm doing
There's
now is when I've done this is my second time I'm doing keto. Right now, I'm making a conscious effort to not go ham, no pun intended, on animal products. So like I'm getting the majority of my fat from nut butters, MCT oil,
and mayo.
and mayonnaise, which is not non-animal based.
Yeah,
but
that's got some eggs in there.
Yeah, but I am trying to not go overboard on animal products.
On the protein? Okay.
Yes. Well, specifically animal products, but specifically protein, because other than like eating fat off of a steak, you're not going to not get protein with some sort of animal fatty product.
Yes.
Most likely.
Yeah, it's hard. That's the biggest. So like when we, we're coaching people with this all the time in terms of our research participants, and when we're working with them, the first thing we say is like, here's your carb cap. Like try to keep your carbs under this. And sometimes there's some range. Sometimes it's 20 grams. Sometimes it's 50. We usually pretty much start like, let's shoot for about 40 to 50 grams. Don't go over that. And we'll track your diet for a few days. We always use our blood ketone measures to actually,
I should have had you bring that.
So that would have been interesting to see. And in fact, like when you're doing the diet itself, depending on your end goal, if you're just doing it to like look nice and lose weight, you may not need the blood measures,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
but the cost of actually doing that is not as high as it used to be. It used to be like $4 per blood ketone
prick.
strip that so that added up a lot. But there's new companies now, Keto Mojo. There's obviously Abbott makes their precision devices that you can get. And the strips have come down, like they're in the range of $1 to $2 for the most part. So that helps a lot as well. But basically what we do is, target your carbs first, get those in order, 40 to 50 grams, and then protein. And if you overeat protein, it'll knock you out of ketosis. Yeah, it'll knock you out of ketosis, just like overeating your carbs.
Really?
Will.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Now, am I correct in thinking that your body will just strip off the nitrogen and feed the protein carbons in through glucose mechanisms? Is that what happens?
I mean, somewhat, but then also, so there's 20 amino acids, or
right.
Some of those are kind of like, they incite an insulin response on their own.
Yeah.
So even if you ate no carbs and you had protein, you're gonna have a bigger insulin spike compared to fat.
Yeah.
For example.
So I'm playing the part of most of the world, and I'm gonna ask dumb questions.
That's fine.
I like that.
So how long, if you start doing the ketogenic diet, how long does it take before?
It's a great question.
Roughly before your body gets into ketosis.
It's a great question.
That's a very good question.
And then a follow-up would be, I'm in ketosis, got a little drunk, went to Taco Bell.
There you go.
How much
ate
does it
some
knock you
carbs.
out?
What damage does that do? And like, how long does it take to get back in?
Gotcha. Okay. So like any, I guess person in science, I'll probably answer that, and it'll be like kind of general. So I'll try to start.
Right. It's like it depends on you and your environment.
Like
Just how many days, Rich?
Give us a number.
Come on.
The stereotypical answer for science is it depends, guys.
Yeah.
So basically, you're looking at, if, for example, like to get into ketosis, to answer your first question, probably looking at a day to 3 days.
Really?
For an insulin sensitive person. So if you're insulin sensitive and you're pretty healthy, even an overnight fast, for example, or if you're doing like time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting, anything like that, if you were to test, and I do intermittent fasting, and I'm not necessarily always adhering to the keto necessarily. Like if I want an apple and I have a hard workout coming up, or just had hard work, I'm gonna eat that apple. However, I have done keto, and I do see the value, and I can see where, like, if I was an endurance athlete and I was like,
or we're gonna get to
backpacker.
We will get to backpacking in a ketogenic diet. I promise you. We gotta lay the foundation.
I've got a good exercise question in there in here too. But sorry, keep going.
So 2-3 days if you're insulin sensitive. We have seen in some cases, if you're relatively insulin resistant, or you're a type 2 diabetic, or maybe you're pre-diabetic, or you just don't know that you actually have diabetes at this point in time. We've seen people that struggle. We'll start you at 40, 50 grams of carb, and we'll get your protein nice and set to your body weight and get you all squared away. And then we've seen people go a week, maybe even upwards of a week to 2 weeks before they start consistently hitting, the blood value that we're usually targeting for nutritional ketosis is 0.5 millimolar. So when you're testing that blood ketone,
nobody listening knows what a millimolar is.
Oh, it's
it's a fancy measurement.
It's just a unit. It's like, so the numbers you're looking for.
It's the concentration of something in your blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can actually express, glucose in millimolar. You can express almost anything in millimolar, but this is ketones.
So here's another. Okay.
I want an answer to the Taco Bell question.
Oh yes.
Let's say, and let's say,
no, you kind of answered it though. Like if
so
you're
a couple
days to get back in.
Maybe faster if you're adapted.
Yeah. So if you're adapted and you just have like the one meal, right? So like basically what you're trying to do is like, you've injured yourself metabolically.
Right.
Let's stop the bleeding immediately. Let's not just be like, well, this day's screwed. Let's just ruin the whole day. We're gonna Taco Bell, then we're gonna go get some cake, and then we're gonna go to Dairy Queen or something. Like, let's not keep the train rolling off the tracks. Let's get it back on.
Okay.
And so, for your example, in one splurge of a meal, great meal, loved it. You get back on track. You probably could, within the next day, by if let's say you did that late at night. You said the example was like you're drunk, go to Taco Bell.
Yep.
Okay, so that's Thursday. Friday night, if you've put yourself back on track,
You're good.
you're probably going to start seeing those, and it depends on if you're actually blood ketone testing. So and if you're not ketone testing, then it's kind of hard to tell, like you're saying. But yeah, if you're insulin sensitive, you're pretty healthy, get yourself back on track. Probably by Friday, at the worst, like Saturday morning, possibly you test your blood ketones. We usually do in the morning, fasted, for all our participants. Test your ketones Saturday, you're probably good to go.
Does drinking alcohol inherently a non-ketogenic activity?
That's a hard question to answer. There's not like good literature
What do
on
you
it.
think?
Like
what do you think?
Our anecdotal data based on when I did the
I'm not drinking any carbs right now, but my body's metabolizing this alcohol.
Correct. Yeah, alcohol is a toxin, so your body's like, we got to burn that crap up and get it out of here.
Does that knock me out of ketosis? I don't know the answer.
So it would be dependent on the amount of alcohol in this case, especially in this case. So like, for example, like a stout beer.
I'm not drinking. Let's say a keto alcoholic beverage.
All right, so red wine
or a
high proof spirits of some sort. You're probably okay as long as you're keeping it kind of in that moderate.
Like I'm
range.
not
like 1 to 2 drinks. If you go like 3, 4, 5 equivalents of
that's gonna screw
your
up.
drink.
Okay.
Yeah, you're probably gonna start messing with your ketones. But yeah, 1 to 2, you're probably good to go. A real stout beer, you could even get away with. I've had anecdotally some friends that have been keto and had 2, 3 Guinnesses, for example, or something like that, and it won't quite knock them out of ketosis the next day. Maybe at that one it's post dinner time, you're hanging out with some friends or whatever. At that point in time, while you're drinking that, you are probably, maybe your blood ketones aren't great, but you're also probably not testing your ketones. So the next morning when you test them again, you might be fine.
Okay. All right, that's good to know.
So this is another thing that I've heard a lot about, like this diet, and this can be said for all other diets as well, but maybe a little bit more so for this one. So if you're if you don't have the willpower, you're not motivated, and you're eating just this high fat diet, low carb, and then you're cheating all the time, is that doing more damage than maybe eating a little bit cleaner? I've heard a lot of conversation.
Yeah,
about
that's
that.
an interesting question.
That's an interesting question.
Just because of high fat, or is that?
So when you say like you're eating, I guess I would probably say, so you can almost think of it like this inverse relationship. So if you're eating a lot of carbs, probably shouldn't be eating a lot of fat, and that's probably the best way to go. If
I
you're
call
eating a
that
lot of fat,
I call that the heart attack diet.
Yeah. So
You eat a lot of carbs and a lot of fat.
Yeah. If you're eating a lot of fat, you probably shouldn't be eating a lot of carbs, and it's kind of this crisscross thing going on.
So it's like, it's really like if you're gonna try this and you're not gonna stick with it, probably eating all that mayonnaise and high fat foods and then cheating all the time is not a good combination.
I wouldn't recommend that. No,
that's just eating a bad diet.
No, I know. I just I've heard a lot of conversation about that. It's just like, I'm eating such high fat, low carb, but it's just like, I'm drinking beer all the time and here and there.
That's
I'm
a
also
problem.
eating bread.
That's a problem.
I would, but I wouldn't recommend doing that even if you were shooting for keto and your carbs were at 45%, for example, for the guidelines. I still wouldn't advise eating a high fat then either. So,
interesting.
It's kind of, so like, just do your best to eat clean as much as you can. You got to enjoy some life here and there. You got to have a Quest cookie or Quest chip here and there.
So, and one thing I wanted to say is the options for keto substitute foods in terms of the food science and engineering aspect, they're way better than they were 4 or 5 years ago. You can get keto everything.
Yes, yeah. Even
I got keto hamburger buns.
Oh yeah, Costco, everything.
What?
Oh, we were lagging. I think we're okay.
We're good now?
I think so.
Sorry everybody about the lags.
You're fine. We're good. We're going.
Okay.
Right there. All right. So we're going to get into backpacking. I want to start with you talking about why the military is interested in this diet. Sure. And I think that's a good segue into why it would be good for backpacking.
You should put up that slide. That was a cool looking slide.
I got it. Whenever it was Rich, tell me what slide, man.
You can go to the first slide. Like this is supposed to be, that was supposed to be like a geographical one. But yeah, if you want to toss that guy.
Okay.
Basically.
Hold on, wait.
It's like a sweet MRE.
It's not on the screen yet.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
In the range of.
So, Rich, why is the military interested in this diet?
So,
is this the main reason?
Part of it's this reason, and this is definitely there's resources out there, which I'm sure we'll end up getting to at some point as well. So, for the most part, like the primary motivator, it probably should be the physiology,
but it's not.
But it, for the military, they're probably not quite like we're motivated by the physiology. Maybe some individuals, some like high-ranking individuals might be motivated by the physiology of this diet. But for the most part, they're interested in the energy density of fat, basically.
Yeah.
And a ketogenic diet is going to emphasize fat, which is the most energy-dense molecule. So you can fit more calories in less space in a high-fat diet than you can do in a, in an otherwise low-fat diet. So that's the primary interest for the military. They are working very hard to be, basically they're producing this, super easy packable, what they're calling a combat ration.
Okay.
With the idea that, similar to backpackers, right? You have to pack in your food, or either that or you're foraging along the way or some stuff. And I don't know if you guys have tried.
We eat some berries.
There you go.
That's about
every
it.
now and then,
We've eaten fish we've caught out there.
Yeah. So you can do some of that along the way, and maybe like I've tried that myself. Not like I'm not an avid backpacker, but I've definitely like in my high school days, I did a lot of trips to the Adirondacks. And we would go knowing like we have, less than half of the calories we're going to need here. The idea is we're going to catch some stuff. we're going to find some stuff along the way. And this was like no more than 2 nights. So there's like a night or two with the idea that like, once we get and it wasn't quite like you're marching through the woods the whole time. It was more like we have to march less than 10 miles to get to where we're going to camp. And we're going to set up camp and we're just going to hang out. Eventually the hanging out gets, there's not a lot to do. So you end up going fishing.
Yeah.
And then you end up like, hopefully you catch stuff and that ends up being, part of your food.
Or you're fasting. You're just going to have a fasting trip then.
or that. Yeah. So,
just not going to eat for 2 days.
Yeah. So we've done some trips like that, I guess, me and one of my friends, John. So, and I guess I've done 2 or 3 trips like that. My brother and my cousin they've been involved with trips like that as well.
Okay.
So you pack not quite what you need, and you hope that you catch stuff. And if you don't, that sucks. But it's only a day or 2, so you're good. You make it back to civilization, resupply, and hit the
what. So I knew this was a obvious pro to a fat heavy diet is reducing the physical volume of food you have. I didn't realize it makes sense that was the military's angle here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they have the compounded, right? We have to pack all our food for possibly a multi-day operation, but then we also have to pack our combat load as well.
Right.
So for a backpacker, I was looking up some data here, like that's what I'm trained in. So I just went to like the boring research studies and looked at stuff pertaining to this discussion. And what would you guys say, like 50 pounds or less easily for most of your backpacking trips?
Or 30 pounds or less.
Yeah. So I saw like 10 to 35 pounds was like the average, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely less than 50 pounds. They're looking at packs that weigh 70, maybe upwards near
because like
100.
ammo and gear.
Absolutely,
and guns,
And I've talked to some of my participants and some of my friends that have actual real life experience. They don't just do science at OSU. They actually have experience with the military. A lot of times, like when it comes to like an MRE, for example, think of a shoebox in terms of like the size of an MRE.
Yeah.
Oh, they're that big?
Yes.
Yeah, they're huge.
So they'll
He's at them before.
Yeah,
I've never eaten one.
They're big in terms of like the space they occupy. So they'll either field strip, they call it, the MRE, and they'll just take like what they want out of it, and they'll like repackage it to get it smaller. Or they'll just not pack as many, because if you have to pick between, like, you're not going to throw your freaking like cosmic brownie at somebody. You need more ammo in your mission.
I mean, three MREs like is like the volume of like this by like this.
Oh yeah,
it's
crazy. Yeah. I mean, maybe a shoebox is, I have small feet. I'm a tiny person, but like a half a shoebox.
Shoeboxes are all the same size, regardless of what size shoe you buy, Rich.
No way. No, where's the difference?
Maybe that's probably not true.
Way.
That's probably not true.
I want to see the shoebox associated with Shaquille O'Neal's shoes.
So,
now.
all right. So, but I do think, and I want you to talk about, there are physiological benefits to the ketogenic diet that the military is interested in.
Okay.
What are they?
So, I mean, obviously the first one, and I don't know if this may be triggering to some people, but we consider like someone that's on a low carb or a ketogenic diet, they are usually associated with a little bit leaner phenotype. Okay. And that tends to be known because
they're skinnier.
Yes.
Okay.
And
they're more active. Yeah.
Well, possibly more active.
So another angle is let's get our soldiers leaner.
Yes.
That's
so
another angle.
like you're carrying this huge pack The fat does nothing for you. Why carry that crap around?
Like on your body?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So why carry more fat than you're going to need some, you need it. But why be 22%? So if you're a male, why be 22% body fat when you could just follow this diet? And that's, the fat is just one thing. Like in terms of the fat added post tissue on the body is one thing, but then the other benefits of the diet could be another, obviously. But why be 22% fat, carry all that fat when you probably should be more like somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% body fat
As a soldier.
Yeah. So that's less weight you're carrying on, in terms of like what you have to move around all day.
That's a backpacking pro as well.
Exactly. Yeah. The power to weight ratio is kind of what comes up in the literature along the lines of that. So that's one. The other one, so if you think about, you guys, I'm sure have been, what we would consider carb adapted folk.
Yes.
Sure.
For most of your lives, most
of
likely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. So when you're basically carb adapted, you're going to need a meal. And your blood glucose is going to kind of dictate that.
This is what I wanted you to talk about.
It's going to be every 2 to 3 hours. So you're probably going to kind of feel a little bit like, I need something.
Especially if you're out there being active.
Oh, and and you're working so when you're carb adapted or you're eating a higher carb diet, your body is like tuned into carbs. Like I burn carbs. That's what they feed me. I like doing that.
Right.
When you're keto or you're low carb or you're a high fat diet kind of rationale or some kind of paradigm where you're emphasizing fat as your fuel macro, you're going to be tuned into fat. So you're going to be able to burn fat a little bit more readily. So for a military, for the same thing, like, you're packing a lot and you're going on this multi-day mission. You don't know when you'll be able to resupply. You don't know what the hell will happen out there. In some cases, similar to backpacking.
Yeah.
You may be out there for a few days. You don't really intend to see, humans or grocery stores for an extended amount of time. If for some reason, your availability of food falls off, and you don't have time to eat, or you lost your food, or whatever the case may be, this diet helps you already like kind of be in the kind of physiological space.
So you don't get that hunger.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to talk about, you don't have to eat as, you did talk about, you don't have to eat as often throughout the day.
You definitely don't feel as if you do.
Correct.
So for what most
yes.
people describe this as, like in terms of the ketogenic diet, it's got this satiety thing, which kind of is this double-edged sword, which I kind of wrote down here. For backpackers, a lot of times, like when you go backpacking, you accumulate a caloric deficit
for
in a lot of cases.
Yep.
Like, and the average I saw was
it's huge,
pretty significant, like in the range of 1,500 to like 20 to 2,700 calories a day is
easily.
your deficit.
I mean, you're burning 5,000 to 6,000 calories
correct.
a day.
Yes. Yeah. And it seems like from the literature,
And you're not eating that.
No, it seems like 3,000 to 4,000 is at best is what you're eating. So, what I've basically kind of seen is that, like, if you're already in that new, that metabolic space where you're already emphasizing fat as a fuel, for example, can we assume, Andy, that you're
he's a standard American, but he eats very clean.
Yes,
though.
you're clean, but you're a carb adapted.
He eats very
individual.
clean. Correct.
Yeah, I ate pretty low carb, except for like, I don't know, like one day, like last night we had North Star and I had a wrap.
Okay. Yeah.
And so other than that, I eat pretty clean.
And it doesn't make any real
but
difference.
I'm definitely carb adapted.
Yeah,
for sure.
So at some point, like let's say we just cut your food off now.
Yeah.
You're gonna definitely feel it around 3-4 hours.
So,
but then around 8-10 hours, you're going to be making this switch where your body's like, oh, I'm going to now try to emphasize fat because that's what I have more available. Right. And you feel it in terms of like, if you're a military, your accuracy, your precision, your thought process.
Like all those parameters go
all
down.
those, you need to be like peaked all the time when you're a military, possibly on a dangerous mission.
I would say for backpacking, you do kind of too.
In some cases, yeah. And I'm trying to draw this analog between like the military and the backpacking community. While the risk of death is, significantly lower, and we can all probably agree upon the backpacker isn't quite at risk.
Correct.
As much. There is a risk, and you're definitely not like, chilling in Westerville or Grandview or Columbus, Ohio. You're like, you're out in the woods.
Right.
Like things happen, and you are not quite as in control anymore.
what's interesting though is on the weekends, I typically only eat 3 meals.
For 2 days?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like I eat 1 meal on Sunday. Like I haven't eaten today, and I'm going to go after this and go running. And I'm fine. I have no hunger, and then I'll eat dinner. And then on Saturdays, usually I have like, I'll lift, and then I'll eat a little bit of protein, like some eggs, and then I'll eat a big dinner, and that's it.
So you're probably
he's a tweener.
You're probably in the, well, I mean, so yeah, there's this whole like, because you can adapt like the macros of your food. That's keto. You can adapt to macros. or any other dietary paradigm where you're controlling the macros,
Yeah.
you can also adapt the schedule or the time range of your food.
Right.
So without, you can be an intermittent faster or a time restricted feeder, as they say.
I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But
It
during the week, I'll eat 2 solid meals a day.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, from a backpacking standpoint, one, you can pack less physical volume of food.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yep.
2, you can in theory not have to worry about eating every 1 to 2 hours while you're backpacking.
Yeah, theoretically, you could eat less often.
Right. You still need to eat the same amount.
Yes, you still should get the calories, or at least to try to, and that's part of that double-edged sword. Because you're going to likely feel a little bit fuller if you guys have ever eaten like a high-fat meal.
Yeah.
You probably feel fuller longer, that kind of thing.
Yeah. For sure.
So you kind of have to, in some cases, combat that if you're applying this to ketogenic, backpacking.
So this is what I wanted.
Hold on, one question though. So in your studies with the military, and this comment was made in the chat, and I see this all as well. Why are they doing more like research around like dehydrating their MREs or freeze drying it? I've seen MREs with freeze dried food in it, but like if they're concerned about weight and volume, why don't they start doing that?
They so like if you that slide there, they are doing exactly that. And these aren't necessarily, I'm not saying that these are ketogenic.
Shelf-stable compressed salad
bar.
Yeah. Have you tasted these?
I've not tried these. So this is happening in, Natick, like the U.S. Arium. So, So this is, in some cases still under development. If you like kind of read the labels there's like a cheese curd.
Here?
Yeah, it's like a cheese curd thing, that top middle thing. I don't know.
Oh. What are some common foods that they're experimenting with?
I think they're trying to do, their best. Yeah. So
is this the low carb? Is this the keto outfit?
So that's the thing. I don't think they're going for keto. I'm not saying that they're interested in keto. I'm saying they're just emphasizing fat in their low volume food packages.
Ooh,
that
there's
they're
a
coming
dessert
together.
bar.
Yes. So I'm not saying they're trying to make
some carbs in here.
Yeah.
Well, no, those nuts.
I mean, that blue thing, I like.
Is that an M&M?
I imagine that's an M&M, and that might be an orange one. So I would imagine those are M&Ms.
Okay.
And I'm not saying they're trying to go keto necessarily, but
just higher fat.
Higher fat in order to get the calories.
Right.
So what is this? Is this what they're
I
going
believe that's
for?
blueberries and bananas.
Oh, so they made like a
keto.
bar.
Yeah.
That's not keto.
So
military.
but like the salad bar thing.
I'm telling you what,
it cannot look like that.
There's no way.
There's no way it looks like that.
Get out of here.
They're saying that based on what I read.
Can you get us some of those?
I don't think I can. I can try.
That's
so with
funny.
all of my dealings with the military, it's I've not been to Natick. I've not been able to interact. Other than
what is Natick?
So Natick it's basically like the base or the area where they have this food,
like where the military does their nutrition
area.
science
their
research.
Nutrition science
it's called
research.
Natick.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that looks so bad.
My understanding is
it's shelf stable,
compressed.
Well, it's microwave dehydrated. I don't know about microwave dehydration, but I remember when I was reading about that, it's microwave dehydrated, and if you basically rehydrate it, put it in some water, it will expand
that's
into
what you do with this.
Theoretically, it'll expand into a salad.
It expands into a salad from Panera, which is what that looks like.
No way.
I don't know for sure, but that's what they're working on.
That's what they're working on.
Which I mean, I commend them because like
this is some Clark Griswold stuff.
That is whole food, and I'm a big fan. That whole food products and that they're able to make them shelf stable. That's much better than my MRE experience has been. Like it's pasta, cosmic brownies. Yeah. And like a side of M&Ms, and then like some weird meat conglomerate.
Yeah,
but it's just like if they're going for calories and fat, you think they would throw the salad to the
right?
Put a bunch of almonds in there.
Yes, but you need the micros. So if you don't have micronutrients, you have a hard time doing much of anything in terms of a long-term diet.
Just give a daily vitamin dose and an MRE.
That could be an option, but and I don't know why they've not explored that. I would imagine they've thought of it. Yeah, but I haven't heard of it necessarily.
So this brings up a good point. So one of the big problems with this diet for backpacking,
yes,
in fact, I would say it's the main problem.
The problem, okay,
is the same thing the military probably has. The food available.
Correct. The storage, right, and transport.
No, I mean like yes, but the food you can buy that is backpacking food is all carbs.
In terms of like what, like Mountain House, that kind of stuff?
Yes.
I would like you to go.
What
and
slide?
This is like towards the bottom.
Okay.
I didn't know this would be new information. So go up one more slide, please, if you don't mind. So
Hold on, I'll zoom out. It's not on the screen yet.
yeah, so
Okay.
there is both a website and a
shit.
book. So Brian Austenheiler
Hold on, wait,
is his name.
Oh God. Hold on.
Sorry, dude.
No, it's fine.
You can hit the far right little deal. It might
This one,
expand
right?
it. No, the far right will at least expand it so that you can still,
Wait.
far right. Little
This?
square with the arrows.
Oh,
So that
okay.
I'll show you like the whole slide, and then you can still
I should
see
go
all the
full.
other
Is this
guys.
full screen?
No, but you can go. I mean, if you
The
want to,
next
it's,
one over.
it's
That's
like
fine.
the
This is
next
better. This is
2 or
better.
3.
'Cause this is better for the viewers.
But basically, so this fella has a book. His website is actually it's pretty good. It's well put together for the most part in terms of like the website, and what he has some recipes. I did key on at least one. There's obviously some, and I would recommend if anyone's interested in ketogenic backpacking. I'm kind of like, I study ketogenic diets. I study some diabetic stuff. I do cardiac imaging research, and I've done some military stuff, but I have never embarked on a scientific experiment or have like this firsthand experience with the ketogenic backpacking world like this fella does.
Does he research it at a university
so, I mean,
level?
well, he has some university experience in
Okay.
terms of like research, and I think technically he's
Are the
like
slides beneath? Are this like if I keep clicking through?
the
will it-
next one is one that I was going to touch on. So basically, he provides. And he does know what he's talking about. It seems like for the most part. I
Buffalo
have
butter.
What am I
Yeah.
looking at?
so I have not bought his book. I did try to Instagram message him. I don't know if you're seeing this, Brian, but if you do, like, it'd be cool to communicate. So please
got
message me back.
Fat-based tea.
Yeah. So, and we used to do this with our participants, and especially like so with the military, like we had a training intervention going on. We kind of just recommend like eat a little bit more salt. So
That's another thing.
One caveat with the ketogenic diet is, the recommended salt intake for the normal human is 2,300 milligrams for the most part. If you're not hypotensive and stuff. So either way, we're going to recommend generally with keto that you're probably consuming upwards of 3 grams or 3,000 milligrams. So you're definitely like your lower area target range that you're looking for is higher than what they would recommend. And most Americans probably hit this anyways.
Do you want to tell people why? I know why, but you should tell people
You
why.
should tell people why. You know stuff. I don't.
Yeah,
have
but
to
you're
be
the expert.
I know, but I mean,
I
expert.
don't- I have no idea why.
This is what I think. Well, you tell me if it's right.
So I think expert is a term that's been used too frequently.
You have a PhD, so I feel comfortable.
Well, I know, but I
telling
think that
you-
the word expert has been used too frequently in our society.
I've been told, at least during, I guess this only applies to the initial stages of adapting to the diet, is you're basically eliminating your internal glucose stores, and with that comes the internal water storage, and so you're losing electrolytes by peeing out all that water when you're eliminating those internal glucose stores.
That might be the case for
No.
no.
So tell me I'm wrong.
I'm not saying necessarily that you're wrong. You definitely probably would be kind of burning through some glucose, but I'm not sure that you're necessarily, you might be peeing out a little bit more because now you've got some,
if
fat
you
metabolism
Google
going on.
ketogenic diet,
Yes.
a lot of people will say you're going to pee more the first couple days.
You likely were, and the reason you need salt is more because you are, excreting more. You tend to become hypovolemic. It's roundabout what you're saying that, but I'm not sure it's because you're peeing out more glucose. You're definitely gonna possibly eliminate more fluid, and you're likely gonna eliminate more salt.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay.
So as you eliminate more salt, and as your kidneys kind of filter out and kind of tend to not be so, as you're, I'm not like a nephrologist in terms of like renal function and that kind of type stuff, but as you pee out more salt, it's kind of related to like as you're metabolizing ketones and your body sees the ketones coming through, and your kidneys kind of like you can get rid of some salt here and there a little bit more so than when you're not keto.
Okay.
Basically, so you're basically eliminating more salt, so you need to replenish more salt. If you want to think of it, very kind of low level, as you pee out more salt or sodium, you should replenish more in your diet, and it's a whole different dietary paradigm than the guidelines. We've kind of seen this, even in some metabolically less healthy people with hypertension or diabetics or that kind of thing, we have seen that you still need to elevate your sodium intake. It may not be, the range we usually give people is like somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 or maybe even 3 to 5 grams a day rather than the 2.3 grams a day they recommend.
Okay. Most people probably don't have any problem hitting that.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. Most Americans already hit.
Yeah.
But what happens is for a lot of people when they cut, the carbs, they cut the processed food, and a lot of sodium comes from processed food. So if you're emphasizing, like if you eat a salad 2-3 times a day, or you're eating a ton of non-starchy vegetables without a label that weren't pre-processed, they've not been pumped up with sodium. So you actually you actively coach people on adding in sodium. So like this, this.
That's what the mayonnaise is for.
Some cases.
Well, it's like you see all those people that do the carnivore diet, and they're just constantly like drinking electrolytes.
I drank. This is a shout out to Kathy. I drank chicken broth first few days.
Oh, absolutely. So
and all throughout the first week or two, all during the day, I was drinking Mio with electrolytes in it all day. So I was like trying to combat that.
Yeah, and we've recommended, or kind of coach people on things, a range of things. We've made electrolyte gummies for our participants in that military study, because not everyone, some people, they are a little bit less affected by it than others, the hypovolemia, as it were, but some would get nauseous, or they wouldn't even be able to complete their training because they would just feel like garbage and that kind of thing. So we would provide them. It was a combination of, chicken broth or beef broth. It was high sodium, a little bit of lemon. We'd give them this drink, kind of like this fella's recommended here. He's got this buffalo butter tea. So it's, it's tea, but it's got some fat source in it. And then he also includes some other things, and you can include specifically some salt.
What do you know what buffalo butter is?
It's buffalo. It's butter made from buffalo.
There's no way.
Milk.
Well, I'm trying to figure out if this would actually taste good.
And I don't know for sure that it tastes good.
I
haven't tested it.
I mean, but it's just bring out some MCT oil capsules or something.
Maybe this is cheaper.
Well, in terms of dissolving the salt and getting the salt down and hydrating, it's a very efficient way to do it. So,
what do you got here?
So that's one entity. He has a book. So for the knowledge area, in terms of ketogenic backpacking.
Okay.
Not only is there a website, there's a book, and then there's also he has some recipes and kind of, why consider keto.
Okay.
He talks about Iditarod dogs, and that's kind of he cites Dr. Volek.
Okay.
In a lot of cases.
Are there any other reasons for doing backpacking in a ketogenic state that we haven't touched on that you want to he talks about that we're missing?
So I think we got basically the
so you can pack less volume of food.
Pack less food.
You don't have to
pack less volume. Yeah, less volume.
You're not taking less calories.
Yeah, that's not the goal.
Yeah. You can take your food bag will be smaller.
That's what you're shooting for.
You can potentially not have to eat. You're still eating the same amount of calories, but you don't need to worry about trying to eat every 1 to 2 hours.
Yes, you won't feel lethargic, or if you kind of while you're exercising a lot and you're kind of moving through the woods and things. I don't know if there's any GI upset with that, or you have to be careful about what you're eating on the move, because I know with ultra marathoners or marathoners,
you're gonna poop yourself. You're gonna poop yourself.
And I did see. So I've nerd. So I went into the research, and the two issues with backpacking research, and obviously they need more research. There's 5 studies that I saw that were actually useful.
Yeah.
You have a calorie intake issue where there's deficit every day basically, and it compiles over time. And then you also have a hydration issue. You have to address both of those. And then for the most part, those are the two main. There are some other things that you factor in along the way, but that's probably not in my realm of talk. So in that case, the hydration stuff would be affected by this as well.
That's a good point. A good point.
But the accessibility to fat stores, and you have huge fat stores.
A lot of fat. Even a skinny person's got a lot of fat.
Even a skinny person has tens of thousands, possibly 100,000 calories worth of stored fat on the body. Can sustain you for a month or more, right? If you were to compare that to glycogen stores on the body, you have approximately 2,000 calories.
That's not much.
That is, while you're backpacking through the woods, that is, you're going to burn, that's a half day of backpacking.
You bring up a good point, and, this doesn't apply to weekend warrior backpackers, but people that are, and we talked about this a little bit, when you go out on even a 3-4 day backpacking trip, and then all the way to people who are through hiking months, you are living your life in a calorically restricted state. I mean, permanently almost.
Yeah.
And it's probably better to do in a ketogenic state than a regular glucose burning state. Is that a fair statement? You're going to feel better, right?
So you may not feel as crappy. Assuming you're not hypovolemic and
Right,
you're doing,
right.
You're
Assuming
doing keto correctly.
you're drinking water
Yeah.
and you're getting electrolytes. Yeah.
Assuming your hydration's good and everything else is normal.
Which for people
just comparing
hiking,
the two diets,
for people hiking, especially like through hiking stuff like that, they're probably gonna have water and they're probably gonna have electrolytes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would think, I never thought about this. I would think they would feel better being at this calorically restricted state in a ketogenic diet than a non-ketogenic
You're
diet.
gonna likely have more ready access to your fat stores if you're keto than if you're not.
Right.
And basically all that means is, if you're not keto adapted and you're not eating enough and you have those caloric deficits, you're gonna feel them more. You're just gonna like kind of be this
You
lethargic
feel like
thing.
ass.
Yeah, you may not feel great. Versus like with the keto thing, like your metabolic machinery, for lack of a better way of describing it, like your mitochondria and all that stuff, like it's kind of tuned into like, where's the fat? I can find it, I can mobilize it, and I can burn it. Versus like for someone that's carb adapted, you're gonna have to like now switch. And that it happens with ultra marathoners, like in terms of like, the bonking, as they say, right? Where they aren't fueling enough and they've now run for whatever it is, 10, 12 hours, 24 hours, whatever an ultra marathon, depending on what the distance is that they're going, they will at some point, if they've not fueled well, they will bonk. They will run out of glycogen stores and they will forcibly make the transition to a fat metabolism.
Because they have
so
to.
it happens that quick?
I mean, it can happen acutely.
Yeah.
But basically they will possibly lose some lucidity in terms of like their thought processes. They have to have people run with them to keep them on the trail because they'll lose it and they'll just like go off into the woods. And you don't want that happening when you're backpacking.
No.
So like you'll maybe not feel as poor as you would otherwise if you're in that deficit.
So Courtney DeWalter talked about that.
Oh yeah, those are the ultra marathoners.
They're just like
weird.
They're just like, I don't know where I was.
Yeah, see? Yeah. So
hold on a second.
the keto people don't usually feel that as
that makes
significantly.
sense.
Yeah.
I want to address a question. It's kind of off topic, but somebody asked it and I thought it was a good question. And it says, can a high weight person start to do high intensity exercise with a diet without hurting their heart and or body?
That's an interesting one.
So,
All right, so
a high weight person doing high intensity?
Yeah,
Okay.
on a diet without hurting
their heart.
and or body.
I guess the short answer is
It depends.
No, that can't be the answer.
Obviously it depends. But I would probably say like short answer is yes, but it's gonna, the range of opportunities to exercise in that way for this person are gonna be less. So, and they've done studies where like, comparing like the long, slow, boring, 30 plus minutes of just running at
That's my jam.
Yeah, running at 6 miles an hour or cycling at 100 watts, 125 watts. They've done those studies compared to like the interval sprints cycling.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking for this individual. If you want to do this, there's no reason you can't. And
so be like a low impact, high intensity.
I would probably start there. There's a ton of caveats. Like so.
Yeah, you need to get with a you need to have you need to be you need to be working with a doctor. In that
in terms of like I don't.
That's funny.
Are you overweight, but also have like a bunch of medical conditions associated with your overweight, or are you just a little bit overweight? Yeah. And so if you're just a little bit overweight and you want to start doing some high intensity interval training, I would say it's been done. It can be done safely. Obviously, you can't be completely stupid about it. You gotta be a little bit smart about what you're doing. I wouldn't start and just, go hit a bunch of like super intense CrossFit workouts.
Just go to a CrossFit class. So Olympic powerlifting immediately.
Yeah. I would there's some onboarding processes depending on your training. So I would say work yourself up to a training status in some capacity, at least where you feel comfortable. But like the high intensity interval stuff, you could still probably do in this scenario on a cycle. You're probably not going to hurt your heart, and you're probably likely not going to hurt your body if you just stay with the cycle. Now, if you're trying to do like the CrossFit style stuff, and you're overweight, and you're now asking the question, "Am I going to hurt my heart? Am I going to hurt my body?" I would anticipate there's probably something else going on that's not just overweight. There might be a clinical thing going on. I wouldn't start with that. I wouldn't start with the high impact stuff. I wouldn't start with like the Olympic lifting.
5'8", 290.
5'8", 290.
Start with some cycling intervals.
Yeah, but it's like 5'8", 290 of like a body fat percentage that's like 30 plus, or 5'8", 290 that's like a body fat percentage of 12%, because that's a different person.
Edwin, I appreciate you being transparent.
Yeah,
That is very
solid
kind.
question.
Yes.
So and I'm happy to, like, I want to help whoever this individual is, but I don't want to also, set them up for failure or injury or any kind of other problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in terms of like doing that type of stuff, you could go for it. But I'd start maybe with a cycle and kind of work your way up to like doing maybe more of the high impact stuff.
Would you start doing the high impact stuff after you drop some weight, or just getting your body like adapted to exercise?
I would, yeah. So if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably start by like you may be still overweight. You may have lost a little bit, but I'm not saying you need to like, become normally weighted to do this stuff. Yeah, you could. Once you're adapted to exercise and you're doing some more of that, then I would say start adding some of that high intensity, high impact stuff in.
High fat ratio is what Edwin's saying. He said he's not a football player, but he's a high fat ratio.
Okay. High body fat. Okay.
So yeah.
What exercise would you recommend for this person if it was high intensity? You think like intervals on a bike,
or intervals on an elliptical or something?
Yeah, I would start something a little bit low impact, like you're
okay.
saying. Like I would start probably more bike, more elliptical, end up adding in some, you can do some stuff running, either treadmills, high interval.
Treadmill's pretty high impact.
Yeah, it's high impact, but then also treadmills are like, I would say they're more dangerous than just running high, like go sprint outside. I would say they're more, so I'd probably maybe like transition from like, bike, elliptical, get outside, do some hill sprints, get outside some, like, you can do some burpees. You can do some of that type of stuff. And it's not going to, you're not going to smash yourself in the face with a barbell.
Edwin also says he worried about getting my heart rate up higher than max, which I can do easier than I'd like.
Higher than max. Higher than max age predicted?
Probably.
Yeah.
I would assume that's
so
what this
age
is.
predicted is plus or minus 12 beats. I don't know how old Edwin is.
And Rich is referring to the equation that's 220 minus your age.
Yes.
Is your age predicted max
good
heart
call.
rate?
Yeah, good call, Kev.
Got
that. So if, he might be able to get, I've seen people that are, mid 20s, almost 30, pushing heart rates that are over 210, and that's not supposed to happen.
Mine's
What's a good like is there like maybe a way you would recommend, like let's say you get on an elliptical or a bike, of like if you want to do like a high intensity, like just set up just very basic, like 5 minutes, push it, 1 minute, cool down, or like is there some type of strategy?
That's a high work to rest ratio.
Yeah. See, this is why this is why you're here.
The ideal is
so in this case, like I'd probably start maybe going in terms of work to rest ratio, more like a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1. So like flip that, sorry, 1-to-2, 1-to-3.
Right.
So like if you're on for 30 seconds, you're off for at least a minute, maybe even 90 seconds or 2 minutes, and kind of work at that. And you can expand the work area. So like if rather than a 30-second sprint, you can expand that to maybe 2 minutes, and then take at least 4 or 5 minutes off, and I would maybe kind of mix and match those for a while. So, but the research on that for sure, in terms of like, I can see why he's interested in this, like the high intensity interval stuff. Let's say you only have 20, 30 minutes, you can do it working at like this flat heart rate of 140, right? Or you can do it doing some high intensity interval stuff. You never stop moving per se. Let's say, you're going to go on a cycle. You're going to go like, let's go shoot for like 300 watts, go and hit that for like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, somewhere in there, at least shoot for something in that range. Maybe then, 60, 90 seconds where you're going to bring it down, 75, 100 watts. Don't stop moving. But in that span of like 30 minutes, if you're doing that high intensity interval where you have, work and rest, they've seen that that's a little bit more effective at a lot of stuff, like the clinical related stuff, blood biomarker stuff. But they've also seen that if you're doing that, I think this, I don't know the exact research offhand, but it ranges from like, 4 weeks of doing this type of thing to like 10 weeks of doing this type of thing. And some of it can be progressive, where the work to rest ratios kind of shrink in over the course of time. It's very effective. And I think in some cases it's more effective than this continuous, like, let's just work kind of hard for a while.
This question is a great segue.
Hold on. Talk about. So Edwin's 32, his max heart rate is 170, 180-ish.
Okay.
He said. Real quick before we move on to Lisa said, I'm having trouble finding electrolyte product without artificial sweeteners. Any recommendations?
Good question.
That is a great question. So
Beef broth,
yes. So when we've done
bouillon
this,
cubes.
we've done So we've done in our experiences we've done like in terms of like also cost efficiency.
Yeah.
They have a Morton Light, call it.
Like salt?
Salt?
Yes, Morton Light.
Okay.
We've used that, so it's instead of just being like standard NaCl salt, it's got also some potassium.
Some magnesium in there?
I think it's 50-50 of NaCl, and it's also got potassium blend. Either way, they have like the standard Morton salt. You can buy this little cylinder. Also Morton Light. So we don't usually go for like a ton of like the Mios and stuff. Although you can do that.
That's what I use.
If you're worried about the artificial sweeteners or you want to eliminate those, we've literally made these things out of, which also has artificial sweeteners. We've made like the gummies, for example, for our participants. That, like, they didn't like the drink. They didn't like the bouillon cube plus the lemon plus some hot water.
What's the ratio of like salt to water or?
What percentage of the beverage should be salt?
Oh, that's an interesting.
Like a teaspoon?
3-4%?
Yeah, so we were doing it, when we were doing it, we were making it and we recommended them. I'm pretty sure we were just using like 1 bouillon cube.
Okay, that's got a lot of salt.
That's how we usually recommended it. And we'd say like you could make, 24 ounces and maybe that lasts you the day. Maybe you have a couple of those, like a couple 12 ounces.
Russian bouillon cubes in between classes.
we had a
What's up,
friend.
Guys?
Yeah.
I just got to have my beef broth here.
We had a friend in grad school. I don't know if you were present for this, but he attempted to eat a dry bouillon cube.
He was not around for that.
He was doing keto. Well, he was
After my time.
He was doing keto, or at least he was making his best attempt at it. And he was like, "Oh, I feel like garbage, and I want some salt or whatever." So he just
hit the mayonnaise, dude.
He just
hit the
crushed
mayonnaise.
He crushed a dry bouillon cube and had a hard time.
Mayonnaise has got the sodium. It's got the fat. Put a little salami on there.
Yeah, or salt. And you can accumulate quite a bit if you're using salted butter or you're adding salt to every meal. You can accumulate quite a bit. The kind of bolus that we're talking about here is usually like, a non-keto person will have their like pre-workout drink. Right. This is kind of what we like for those that were affected by this hypovolemia or felt kind of nauseous or would end up not making it through a workout. When we noticed that in the individual, we adjusted by giving them this this tea, like this this buffalo tea that he's kind of talking about.
You gave this to people?
Not this. I didn't know this existed.
But something like this?
Yeah, this. So like we were collecting this data, 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
There was a little bit collected maybe in 2018, but so his, I don't know when this, I guess, came out, when his
probably after that.
Yes, I think it was after the case. Like so, and that's kind of, it touches on, you already hit it, but like even across our study, as we were collecting data over like a year and a half, 2 years, the amount of products from like day one, where we're like, we need to like get these, like, so like Moon cheese.
It's never been easier
Yeah.
to do keto.
Yeah, Moon cheese is really good. The cheese wisp, both these are available at Costco. They are not cheap. They're like $10 for like a bag that you're disappointed by. But they are, they're keto friendly. They're already dried. They pack well. They're shelf stable.
Yeah.
Like
Trader Joe's has a version of that too.
Correct.
It's a lot cheaper.
Yes. So like the products that they have now are, they're there. And in terms of like this bolus, like dissolving a bouillon cube in 12 to 16 ounces of fluid, and maybe including some like lemon or some tea for flavoring or something like that. We kind of viewed this more as like a pre-workout if you had symptoms or signs of problems along the way. Like we had plenty of participants that were able to get enough salt within their diet, and we just said like, add salted butter, and we provided food to a lot of them, but some of them enjoyed cooking, so we would like just buy them the groceries, and they would add stuff on their own, and they cook their own stuff.
I see.
And they didn't have any problem hitting their salt things, and their training was fine. They're, and you can tell. And I recommend, like, you can do keto and you can be sedentary, and that's fine. But I think in some cases, like, if you're not going to test your blood and all that kind of stuff, the first time you're going to notice there's a problem is going to be associated with your training. Like, you may not notice sedentary, that you're kind of like not doing the best on your diet. But as soon as you go exercise, if you're feeling sluggish or having a problem, like, you probably know that you're kind of in this no man's land where you're not quite keto, you're kind of low carb, but you're,
your body doesn't.
Yeah, your body doesn't know. Like, yeah. So there is some, value in the training aspect of it as well.
Specifically, my last runs, I've been specifically running fasted and at a slower intensity, and this gets into what I want to talk about to like induce ketosis in a. Is that the right thing to do?
So there's many ways to induce ketosis. Obviously,
I'm gonna run anyway.
Yes.
So I figured running slower and fasted was a better way to induce ketosis. True or false?
It will upregulate your fat metabolism.
For sure.
Yeah. So naturally, you'll upregulate that fat metabolism will be bumped up a little bit. You can also add caffeine. That helps.
I do that as well.
Yeah.
Possibly some bulletproof coffee has been.
I've done that too.
Has been recommended or explored in some cases where you're adding now
to like induce higher ketosis during exercise,
just to kind of help prime the body to burn fat.
Okay.
And kind of upregulate that. So you'll if you're doing this in the morning, I don't know when you're doing this, but
correct.
If you're doing this in the morning, you've already not probably eaten all night.
Correct.
So your body's kind of like either you're already somewhat upregulated. So a lot of people, if they're metabolically healthy and they span an entire 12, 14 hours, maybe 16 hours of no food intake,
they're going to be in it anyway.
If your normal carb adapted person is 0.1, 0.2 millimolar of ketone, beta hydroxybutyrate, someone that's, fasted 12, 14, 16 hours, they may be at a 0.3, 0.4, and they're almost at a 0.5. Okay. Just if they're, metabolically healthy and they haven't eaten in a while, your body's very well set up. Like this is ingrained in human survival, basically. Like we did not have refrigerators back in the day. We ate when we could find food.
A bunch.
Yeah. So we were set up to be able to relatively quickly switch to fat metabolism. That's not to say you switch to like peak, really high quality fat metabolism. That takes some time, and that's kind of like the keto adaptation period. So you can get your way back to the question before. You can get your ketones up, right, in a day or so, but you may not become pretty comfortable, and your performance may not be what
How long does that take?
remember. That could take 4 weeks,
months,
4 weeks, 6 weeks.
Okay.
I feel so much better running fasted.
There could be some GI things there.
Yeah.
Your stomach might just like not having anything in it.
It just
Today
I feel
felt
much better.
The first 2 runs in a fasted state, they sucked, but today I felt great.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of the last sciencey thing I wanted to talk about, and something we talked about with the Backcountry Foodie is substrate utilization during exercise, and how if you're at so let's just take a regular person, not a keto person. Even at rest, there's still a large amount of their body is burning fat for energy. Correct?
Yeah. Right. So regardless of who you are, regardless of what your diet is, you burn a sizable amount of fat doing low activity or more or less sedentary. Yeah.
When you start exercising, the amount of carbohydrate you burn in a normal person increases as the intensity of the exercise increases.
Yep. It's relatively linear, I guess, if for lack of a better way of describing it.
My question is, let's take backpacking for an example. So let's say you're backpacking all day. It's never flat. Yep. So it's more strenuous than walking. It's probably as strenuous as running slow because you're still walking.
I would agree wholeheartedly with that. I've looked at some of the numbers on that. Yeah.
In terms of I'm a keto person. My ability to use fat to power my exercise, is that still going to be cool if the intensity of my exercise is high, even though my body prefers carbohydrate at higher intensity exercise?
So basically at any given amount of exercise at peak, let's say you are, for example, a Wingate test.
Well, let's say here, I'll put it in context. Let's say I'm backpacking. I got to climb this summit.
Yep.
It's going to be moderately to let's say not high intensity. I'm not sprinting.
Okay.
I'm still walking uphill.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not above threshold. Okay. You can still have a conversation.
Okay.
Am I going to be able to harness fat as my fuel source at that intensity?
That will be your primary, more than likely. This may warrant a slide as well.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see.
But you understand what I'm asking.
I do.
Okay.
So I have looked into this.
Do you understand what I'm
in terms
asking,
of backpacking?
Andy?
Yeah. I mean, are you I think you're asking.
Is
I think you're
this
asking.
one? Is this the slide?
This is related. Yes, this is one of
Which
them.
slide do you want me to
You're
go
asking.
to?
You're asking a very.
Let's go to that. Yeah, the one with the orange lines. There you go.
Of course, it's going to be yes.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Well, I don't know.
So your ability.
I mean, if you've adapted your body
The question
to keto,
is, yeah, but even like, let's say I'm a ketogenic athlete. If I go out and sprint at the highest of my ability, I'm still got to be burning a little bit of carb, right?
Oh, you're gonna burn at the highest of your ability, like
high.
So this is like 100 meters or less.
Yes, 100-meter sprint. I'm a and take creatine out of the picture.
ATP PCR.
ATP PCR. No, we're not talking about that. The 400-meter.
The 400. So that's 40-ish seconds.
So
on
high,
like a really good athlete.
high
40-ish
intensity,
seconds.
but I'm a keto athlete. Am I still able to perform at that intensity?
You'll still perform,
But
you
not,
may.
but as good or not as good or
I don't know that we have a good study to give us
So
a clear
what,
answer on that.
I
So
have this up
basically,
on the
So
screen.
on this slide here.
So what's going on here?
Basically, during exercise, this is associated with.
Oh, this is exactly what I want to talk about.
The
Okay.
ultra endurance
Yeah.
athletes, and these were elite ultra endurance athletes. So these people.
Is this the faster study?
Correct.
You know who's in this study? You know who's one of these data points?
Zach Bitter.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and you know. Okay, hold on. You know what's interesting about him too is that
He
he's like,
cycles.
but he's keto, and then when he does his runs, he
carbs it up.
carbs up.
that so there's an entire like
So
we talked about a whole.
walk us through what we got going on here.
So so far I
So this.
is this the left for them as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's this?
Far left, you're basically like the HC, LC. HC is high carb athletes, and
Okay. These are elite athletes.
yes, both groups, high carb, low carb, both elite
endurance
ultra
runners.
endurance
Okay.
marathon
Wow.
runners. So so they have high fat oxidation rates, peak fat oxidation rates, but they're still about twofold lower than the
Right.
low carb. And not all these individuals would, if we were to measure their blood ketones, would be hitting nutritional ketosis, resoundingly every time. But they are low carb. They emphasize fat in their diet. Depending on their training, they may overconsume protein here and there, and that may knock their ketones down a little bit. But their fat metabolism rates were like nearly off the charts, or possibly.
But does
Now is this at exercise? Or is this at rest?
This is during exercise.
But
This
does that translate to better performance?
That's a good question.
So for an ultra marathoner, the thing that they deal with, and we talked about it a little bit, and I would say it's analogous in some capacity to a backpacker. You are going to have a hard time at some point, like either you're fueling frequently enough and adequately enough during your intervals as a high carber.
So you're eating those gels.
Yeah, or
okay.
for an ultra marathoner,
Yeah.
it's gels or goos.
And
or,
backpacking's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, either you're going to do that and you're going to not have a problem. And that's fine. You'll keep your glycogen topped off. You keep your blood glucose high enough that you can burn it.
Yeah.
Or if you don't do that, you might bonk, or you might feel sluggish, or, disoriented, whatever. Like, I don't think backpackers have the disorientation to the same degree, but they're not asking their bodies to perform at that higher level for 12 hours, 13 hours. Like, my understanding is it's 6 to 8 hours approximately for most backpackers. Heart rate range, which is kind of related to this question.
Yeah.
For the most part, you're going to be in the 120 to 140 range. And then you're going to have a couple, like you say, like the uphills here and there, where you're going to maybe push north of 150,
So
but you're probably
like a
unlike,
hard run.
Yeah, but you're unlikely to get, and it's age dependent, obviously, the 220 minus age thing, but 120 to 140 is normal hiking or backpacking, and then 150, maybe 170, depending on the hill, depending on what you're doing. So you will reach higher heart rates, but even on the right-hand side, so like your peak oxidation at any given point, if you're low carb.
So this
or
was
high
during
fat,
exercise.
Yes.
Okay. So during exercise, this is obvious. The people eating low carb, high fat,
Yep.
they utilize a lot more fat for their energy
Oh, yeah.
versus the people that are eating carbs.
Yeah, and that's
So
probably
I'm assuming
intuitive.
if you looked at
right.
That's
yeah.
if you looked
yeah.
at glucose oxidation, it would be flipped, right?
Yes.
They're probably burning
And
glucose.
you can see that in the graph there, I suppose.
So what about the graphs on the right where
Oh,
it
here
actually
you go.
shows their
Okay.
performance?
Yep. So this is more just the fat oxidation rates over the course
during
of. It's a
okay.
So what was this run?
This was a 3-hour run, around 60% of their VO2 max.
So an easy 3-hour run. Ben Greenfield was in this too.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was.
60% of your max is like not.
It's
You
not-
can have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terribly difficult, but it's yeah. So
That'd be a long, slow run for
and
these
you can see
people.
the fat
that's on a
oxidation.
treadmill?
Yeah.
Yeah. How much do they get paid? They got a couple
Oh,
G's.
I don't remember what
they
they
got
got
a
paid
couple
for.
G's.
Was this yours? Were you involved with this study?
I didn't collect any data with this study.
Okay.
Did you help publish it?
I did. I'm not on this one, no.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, Rich.
It's okay.
It's a pretty cool study. Though.
It was like,
There's a bunch. It
doesn't mean the data's not cool.
There are a bunch of Navy SEALs in this too.
Yeah, just a bunch of badass.
So this top right picture shows the amount of fat they're burning over the course of this 3-hour easy treadmill, easy quote unquote.
Yeah. Yep.
So obviously,
Go run on a treadmill for 3 hours.
It's not easy.
I would need a
It's not easy.
I would need a
Right,
couple. I would just get bored.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know how. Yeah. So these people were
So the
incredibly dedicated.
I'm
to this.
assuming these are the low carb people up
Yes.
here.
So orange, you can see on the fat oxidation curve at any given point in time during exercise, even though the exercise was the same for both groups,
Yeah.
they were burning a ton more fat. And then counter to that, you can see the
Interesting,
carb oxidation.
at rest, they're not really burning that much more. Or maybe the scale is just off.
No, that's. I mean.
So fat oxidation between a keto person and a regular. I guess you're not expending calories. That does.
Yeah,
make sense.
when you're not exercising, it
that
may
makes
not be
sense.
tremendously different in terms of like an grams per minute type.
So were these fasted runs?
These I don't believe were fasted runs. These
So
I think they had been fueled adequate to their diet. So like
So
if they were
these were not fed the same people. These two groups were
the
not
high
fed the same
carbers,
thing.
Were fed
Okay.
basically high carb related,
Okay.
something that fit with their dietary
Okay.
paradigm, and the low carbers were fit because
Okay.
3 hours is a relatively long time. But
So what I'm reading here is at 60% of your max heart rate, which I would definitely put backpacking in that exercise intensity.
I would say it's it's similar.
So at a backpacking intensity, you're still good to go in terms of a ketogenic athlete.
I think that not only are you good to go, I think there are some benefits.
Right.
There are some disadvantages. Like every diet has pros and cons,
Right.
but I would say there's some advantages here where, as a keto backpacker, you might have fueling advantages.
What are some of the disadvantages of of keto?
So for one, I think we touched on it. It was some of the meal planning or some of the
food availability.
What do you bring? How do you store it? That kind of thing.
Like if you go to REI and buy backpacking food or go anywhere to buy camping food, you're hosed.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's maybe 5% of the food.
There was one company. We should slide this one.
Okay,
as
all
well.
right,
All
let's
right,
slide.
yeah.
All right, Rich. Which slide?
And maybe there's more than
This
one.
one?
Yes. So Next Mile Meals,
all right,
they
wait. All right, we're good. Wait. Oh. All right, we're good.
they're said to specify or kind of specialize in these low carb or what they consider
It's called
possibly,
Next Mile Meals. I've never
Yes.
heard of it.
And you can buy. I think they have 8 different products. They have 2 breakfasts, and then they have like kind of this other.
Is this
mixed bag.
is this some of their products, or is this what you eat? What you'd eat during the day?
This is their product breakdown in terms of macros.
Okay, so they offer
So-
these 4 things.
They offer 8. I just sampled.
Okay,
so
all right,
they have
cool,
2 breakfasts.
cool.
So the 2 breakfasts.
I did not know about this.
Yes,
This is
So
cool.
They do have products that are available that are, and then I put these macros up there just to give you an idea.
66 grams of protein.
So,
in
yeah,
Buffalo
so-
ranch chicken.
That sounds
Yeah.
good.
And
Jesus.
so the Buffalo Ranch chicken I put up there first because that
You
one
can
is.
hey, shout out! You can make this at home. We make this too.
Yes. Well, that's what I
Yeah.
was gonna say. So,
Yeah.
my in terms of resources, basically, for someone that's interested in trying to apply this, and then I would say, I don't know if we've touched on it. I would not go ahead and say like I'm going backpacking. Let's go keto
Do this?
backpacking.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say build the foundation of being low carb or
Like for,
keto
like, a
for a
couple
little
weeks.
while.
Yeah.
Experiment with it, and then go backpacking and try it. I wouldn't
So-
say like today's Thursday or Friday or whatever day. Saturday I have a backpacking trip. I'm keto now.
So I did this past weekend because we just went out for a night.
Yeah.
And I just took a big ass steak.
Yep. So I mean, and there's
Didn't have to worry about it on the one nighters.
so I while there's a ton of controversy and people constantly seem to be at each other's throats within nutrition research, it's so interesting. Like every time you hear about something, it's it's something that's relevant. Like
Yeah.
there's people that do carnivore now, and 2 years ago I didn't even know
That's
what
a whole
carnivore
other
was.
thing.
Yeah.
You ain't doing that backpacking.
I mean, it's
you
probably
could.
you could do
You could dry-
pemmican.
Dehydrated.
Pemmican.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh.
pemmican.
Pemmican, baby.
Oh.
Have you had it?
Huh? I've had pemmican. I've actually had pemmican and not hated it.
If you don't know, if you're listening and don't know what pemmican is, Google it.
They have
It just sounds so gross.
that other fella, Brian
Makes sense.
Austenheiler.
Oh,
He has some.
that would be the perfect backpacking food though.
So
if you could
and,
stomach
and,
it.
and that was like in terms of the meal planning and that kind of thing, like people kind of figured out some of this already, and they've like even the rest. I know you talked about with Aaron, the
Yeah.
backcountry foodie. You talked about like fat going rancid and stuff. And that is definitely something that you need to at least
control for,
consider.
No? Yeah.
Just cover everything in fat, like pemmican.
So it's saturated fat that does not become rancid.
Okay.
So if you emphasize, so like for pemmican,
I've been told saturated fat I shouldn't eat.
and yeah, so that's a whole nother thing.
I know.
Yeah,
I know,
so that's
kidding.
like a whole nother. Like we could do one whole episode on that probably.
I know.
But yeah, basically, like if you think about, saturated fat is most predominantly in animal products, than the meat products that you're eating and that kind of thing. And the human body, as well as animals, mammals generally, not only do we store more saturated fat and more monounsaturated, we tend to burn saturated fat better, more effectively, and also the monounsaturated. Polyunsaturated you get from plants. You can eat them as a human, but you don't necessarily store them as well, and like you're better set up to work with both saturated and monounsaturated. But
so as a human in keto, you utilize fats from animals better than fats from plants. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if you have to be like a keto human for that.
Just in general.
I would say just in general,
Okay.
humans for the most part probably at least are set up to do that a little bit more effectively, because that's kind of what we have in our body. Like we're storing fats as saturated and monounsaturated a little bit more in our body than we are polys.
That makes sense.
It's if you can get over the hurdle of I'm afraid of saturated fat. Let's assume
that's a hurdle for some people.
That's a hurdle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of the issue with ketogenic diets.
Right.
Like you're gonna eat more saturated fat. Your LDL may be affected, but your HDL likely is gonna go through the roof, and you're gonna probably and you're probably gonna like your ratio is probably gonna be at least healthy, if not maybe improve your ratio of HDL to LDL. So there's like a whole slew of things going on there. But assuming you can get over the saturated fat thing, then you can, like pemmican is basically like the tallow. So that is hard as a rock. Hard as a rock at room temperature. That is saturated fat, baby. It is not a liquid at room temperature. It is not unsaturated.
The other thing with backpacking too is like you gotta consider like the enjoyment of a meal.
Yeah.
And that's a thing backpacking. Like,
I've seen it.
10 hours.
What's his
a slab of pemmican is not gonna like satisfy me.
That's so the pemmican, I think, obviously it was, is heavily relied upon in like indigenous populations.
Right.
Native populations.
I've read articles where they've found like pemmican that's 500 years old and still edible.
Yep. Oh yeah. So it perfectly. So in terms of like the meal planning and preserving food, like high fat doesn't mean you cannot store it or, preserve it and transport it. Like I think people are, because it's not easy to do or because it involves some work, people are like, well, I could just go get a mountain house. And it's a lot easier, and it's got a lot of carbs, but it's also like ready to go. So at least like the next mile meals, like they've got stuff that they're trying, they're doing something to make it a little bit lower carb. The protein in some cases you saw like
real high.
Some of them are like 60 grams a meal.
High.
I would say that's probably a little high, but like the breakfasts are 30 to 40 grams, and then there was a couple. I only provided 3 of the non-breakfasts, but there are a few that are like the Italian meatball is only 42 grams. That's not far off of, so
is that literally a meatball?
I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's a single meatball.
I bet it's like wait. Oh no.
Oh, there's another slide. So I was just basically saying,
is this
like
Backcountry Foodie?
Yeah.
Oh,
so she has great stuff too.
Shout out to Backcountry Foodie.
Yeah. Like she does a great job, and you can adapt things to fit. So like, for example, I just did, and this was maybe easier, and I don't know, but either way.
Oh,
like,
I see. You took one of these and figured out.
You can just items that would not be keto, graham crackers. You can basically food process or grind down some pecans, walnuts, butter, and cinnamon.
Okay.
And you can make like your,
I didn't know
for
that.
For example, if you're gonna make a keto cheesecake, that is your crust. It's pecans, walnuts. You're gonna, make some butter, cinnamon concoction, kind of make that your crust, and then you can put whatever you want in terms of a high fat filling with cream cheese and things in it.
Cream cheese is keto.
And then, Jell-O, just make it like the sugar-free or the zero sugar model.
Oh, interesting.
So you can even adapt. And I'm not saying that you have to buy these products in terms of like Next Mile. I'm saying like, if you're doing this,
there's some options.
There are options.
Yeah.
There are good resources, even if you have to adapt some things here and there to make it keto or low carb friendly.
It's definitely much easier to do it now than it ever has been.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nuts for the most part. I mean, your walnuts and pecans are going to be the lowest carb per gram.
Okay.
Peanuts, I think, are kind of mid-level. Cashews are, Jesus, it's like
Peanuts are mid-level. I know.
Cashews are higher. It's like 9.2 grams.
I love cashews.
of
God,
carb per
cashews.
ounce or something. Or
so that's good to know. I actually didn't know. I didn't know about this Next Mile thing.
yeah, Next Mile seems good. I mean, and then the other fella, ketogenic backpacking, he has some good information. I think he has recipes too.
I still don't know if I would do it. I like being keto right now, but I don't know if I'd do it during backpacking. I don't know.
He
have to
has
look at this stuff.
Yeah, so the ketogenic backpacking guy has his testimonial and how he's done this on numerous occasions.
There's definitely a weight advantage to it for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But it's like I guess I could just eat dehydrated ground beef for 7 days,
whatever,
with olive oil in it.
Yeah, but I mean, also like you can dehydrate your veggies and
that's
that kind
true.
of stuff.
That's
like,
true.
You can, I'm sure, find ways to do it. And I don't know if he included a lot of sodium.
Oh, okay.
There's some, I don't know. There's slides.
Are there any other slides you
want?
want?
There's slides up north. We could try to hit something. Oh, the muscle glycogen came up with Aaron from Backcountry Food.
Yes. Okay. Talk us through this.
Same study.
First, what is muscle glycogen?
So muscle glycogen. Maybe we need to go up further because that'll just facilitate that. Yeah.
Oh, you got transition.
Look at that.
Okay. Oh, you got in here. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about all this.
Okay. Wait, where should I go?
Just go to...
I didn't realize you had a cool thing here.
Oh, it's cool.
Oh, we're just blowing through this and you prepared all this.
All right.
I mean...
Where do you want me to go?
I would go to the bar graph one. It's yellow and red. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is this?
In terms of what you have available, we talked on about this a bit. So the energy available in terms of fat or triglycerides stored on the body, even in a lean person, greater than 80,000 calories in most cases.
Okay.
Versus your carb glycogen storage, which is basically the carbohydrate storage form. So fat we know stores within adipose tissue as triglycerides and in fat cells. Carbohydrates, when you overconsume those, basically you end up storing it as glycogen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like this huge poly chain of carbs.
It's like wood.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, well,
it's very similar to
starchy,
wood. Yeah.
starchy wood inside your muscle.
It's wood.
But you have muscle stores and you have liver stores of glycogen.
And most is in your liver, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But no, it's most in your muscle.
But in any single, there's more in your liver than any single muscle, correct?
I would tend to agree. Yes, I'd have to. I don't want to tell you
He's
the wrong thing.
Hesitantly agree.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you the wrong thing on that. But
all right,
there's in the range.
There's a lot of glycogen in your liver, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
relative to the rest of your body.
The two primary spots that you're gonna store are muscle and liver for sure, and you will have 2,000 kcals approximately. So like you can tell there's a huge difference there in the availability. Like if you have to call on all your fat stores versus all your
got a lot more energy.
Yeah, you've got like the single gas can you fill up to go boating, right? Or you've got like tanker trucks full of fuel for the fat in terms of your glycogen. Yeah. So so you can rely upon that, which is helpful. But if you kind of like, I guess, move down, the reason people are interested in glycogen is because they'll have to go.
You're trying to move down on the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. Keep going.
Well, you have to keep going down further. This is kind of like
here we go.
Yeah. So glycogen is of interest to people because, for the most part, carbohydrates have been associated, like you're saying, with like the higher the intensity the exercise you're doing, the more you're going to rely on carbohydrates, because although they don't provide as much energy per gram, right? It's only 4 kcals per gram for a carbohydrate versus 9 for a fat. You can burn carbs quite a bit faster. So if you can burn it faster, if you can cycle the ATP faster, you can move the muscles faster and run faster. None of that, in my opinion, applies in most cases for backpacking.
That's a good call out.
I would agree.
So
unless I got to run away from a bear, right?
Yes.
Am I going to die?
Yes. Well,
the high carb guy's
that's creatine.
I mean, maybe. I mean, it depends how far you're running. But I would say in that case, even there with a low carb or ketogenic diet, you're kind of protecting those glycogen stores because you're going to rely more on the fat, as we showed the other graph.
Okay.
But basically, this is kind of same thing. Ultra marathoners, same exact study.
Okay.
Comparing the baseline immediately post-exercise and then 120 minutes post-exercise.
This is the amount of glycogen. I did not realize this.
Yes.
They have the same amount of glycogen?
So now you'll find discrepancies within the literature along the way here, right? Because
I assume low-carb people have less glycogen.
That is absolutely the assumption, which is fine. And
that's incorrect?
I'm not saying necessarily it's incorrect. So at 4 weeks, there's data that actually Dr. Finney, who is like a mentor and he's somewhat related to some of the work that we've done, and he's, kind of actually some of the more seminal work that laid the foundation for doing low carb research he started with. He saw in 4 weeks that there was a reduction, almost like a 50% reduction in muscle glycogen. It wasn't associated with exercise. I don't think it was just more like a, just a pre-exercise or, this is 3 muscle biopsies around exercise, baseline and after. So he saw at 4 weeks, the low carb or the keto people did have a reduction in glycogen, and that's 4 weeks. That study that we were talking about with the tactical athletes that was related to my dissertation, there was another student named Vin Miller who did his doctoral work on the kind of the more biochemical related stuff. He's much smarter than I am. So he did a lot of work with the biochemical assays, and he did a lot of the work with the muscle glycogen. We saw a tremendously reduced discrepancy at 12 weeks between our athletes that were keto and non-keto.
So after 3 months, the people who were on keto had significantly less carbohydrate stores.
Significantly less reduction of. So for example, at 4 weeks, let's say it's about a 50% reduction in glycogen stores, kind of as your normal person, if they've been low carb for 4 weeks. At 12 weeks, we saw it was like less than 20% disparity. It was a much lower disparity.
Back.
Yeah. So it kind of over time comes back. It's basically almost the exact same. These individuals on average were upwards of 6 months, 9 months being either high carb or low carb trained. Like they've been doing this for months now, almost, in some cases it was over a year, but it kind of averaged out. So, in this case, we saw that like, if you've been doing this and this is kind of your diet, like your body will find a way to resynthesize glycogen, and you will become, if you're burning less carbs, you would assume that you have more carbs to kind of put back into glycogen storage.
So my whole running fasted to deplete my glycogen stores is bullshit, is what you're telling me.
Running fasted to deplete glycogen. It depends on what,
I ran today.
Yes.
I ran
with the purpose of depleting glycogen, or just?
I ran at 75% of my max heart rate.
Okay.
For 2.25 hours.
Okay.
Completely fasted. Caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you burned up some glycogen.
Did I burn more glycogen than I would have had I not been doing the ketogenic diet, but fasted levels the same?
More glycogen than you would have.
Did I burn less glycogen? Sorry, less glycogen.
More than likely, yeah. I don't know how long you've been. How long have you been doing this?
13 days.
12 or 13? Yeah. So more than likely, a non-keto person would have burned more glycogen on their run. Same.
Does
everything
this support that?
This basically says that if you've been keto for a while, that your muscle glycogen levels aren't, reduced by just the nature of being keto. And that has to do with the adaptation process, which for an elite trained athlete may take months, almost,
So this one on the right is showing like the effect of exercise on the glycogen stores.
Yes.
So you exercise, you lose a lot, but the low carb people are losing the same amount.
Yep. And they come back to, approximately the same IP. Their resynthesis. And that's like, we don't have a real good scientific rationale for like how exactly this happens. Like there's plenty of carbons floating around that you can, move around and, acetyl CoAs and all that stuff. You can like shuttle into different areas to resynthesize glycogen. But in a lot of cases, what we've been told is that if you're keto, your glycogen must be reduced.
Yeah, that's what I've been told.
Yeah.
That's what the internet says.
I'm sure. Yeah. The internet says
but
so
you're
many
telling me
things.
that's not necessarily true, which is interesting.
Yeah. Not necessarily true. It would depend on how long you've been keto. And
I'm tempted to believe you over the internet.
In case of you, if you've only been doing this, on the span of 2
probably
weeks,
the same.
You at baseline, if we were to just go grab some muscle sample out of your leg
You're
right now.
not taking a muscle biopsy on me. Do you know what a muscle biopsy is?
I don't. It's
exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. Take muscle.
They carve out a piece of your muscle.
At baseline right now, you might be a little reduced compared to your high carb self.
I'd have to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you continue this keto train for a while, you may come back to normal.
So that is a good adaptation then. So when you need that glycogen, it's there.
That's been like, so for these ultra marathoners, right? They need to run the race at their, pretty significant elevated heart rate for hours and hours and hours and forever. But then at some point you're going to have to pass somebody. At some point you're going to climb a hill.
Right.
At some point
you're going to have to tap into it.
You want to get to that high gear.
Interesting.
And when you want to get to that high gear, you need the glycogen. And that's kind of been the rationale behind like, well, for sports, maybe keto's bad.
But this is saying maybe not.
I'm saying it depends on the sport and it depends on the athlete. If you
it depends.
yeah.
It depends.
But what I am saying, it's worth considering and trying. That's for sure.
It's definitely worth
to
trying.
write it off is probably
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
most wise decision.
Nice. All right. Any questions from the audience?
No, we've addressed them all. There's a lot of comments about how people trust you because you have a mustache, though.
Oh shoot!
Oh, also, I need to ask you because some of the people
I didn't
watching
know that.
are some of the people watching. Are there any studies you guys are looking for participants?
Most of our studies got like just absolutely crushed by COVID. I don't know.
But like, do you have anything on the docket?
So we have a few. I mean,
Are you seeking participants that are eating on a keto diet? I'm not saying I want to, but I know people that are listening that
we
are.
at least have one ongoing from, this one would be specifically for women that are interested in keto. We refer to it as Lady Stack, but basically this study in particular, you're going to eat a ketogenic diet. It'll be kind of virtually guided and coached. So you won't necessarily be, provided all this food all the time and things. You'll be coached throughout the way. And so that's one, but it's more or less for, non-clinical healthy people.
Okay.
We are, as far as I know, we're still working on a cancer study. This is like stage 4 stuff that Parker Hyde's working on.
Okay.
I think they're more or less.
But you're not like any just other than women. You're not looking for any just random ketogenic people to be in studies.
At the moment, those are the two, and then I have a heart failure study. But you have to be a heart failure with preserved ejection fraction and willing to do keto for about 4 weeks.
Do you think that'll help them?
We're very interested in it as a possible
keto to
therapeutic tool.
Preserving heart function.
Yes.
Interesting.
Especially with preserved ejection fraction, those heart failure patients.
Those are the bad ones.
You can be reduced ejection fraction. That manifests easily to find, or at least diagnosis of it's quite simple, right? You can see the ejection fraction's reduced, but
that's the amount of blood that's coming out of your heart.
Yes.
For every beat, for people who are listening and we're like, what the hell is ejection fraction?
Yeah. So whatever fills up as the blood empties into your heart, you have your stroke volume. So if whatever your end diastolic volume is, that fill total, you take your stroke volume out, whatever that fraction is.
But the point here is there's potentially cardiotherapeutic effects of a ketogenic diet that you're looking to study.
So they saw in an infusion study in humans that had heart failure, this was reduced ejection fraction, so a little bit different.
Yeah.
But reduced ejection fraction, they have therapeutic medications and they have options allowed to them. For those with preserved ejection fraction, they have far less.
Interesting.
So it's harder to find clinically because their ejection fraction is normal and they just kind of have like the shortness of breath and they don't feel right. But then also there's not a lot of treatment options. You're just, for the most part, you're like, let's control your sodium, let's monitor your blood pressure, that kind of, generic stuff. So we do have a study where we're trying to evaluate ketogenic diet as that. So they've seen if you infuse ketones, beta hydroxybutyrate specifically, into people, so that involves an IV. It's not, super, people generally don't like needles and IVs, and for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's not like something you can do like every day. Like, hey, I'm gonna, go infuse all day. But they saw a 2 liters per minute increase in cardiac output in both heart failure patients and healthy patients when they infuse beta hydroxybutyrate. And there's animal data that says that
supports that.
That basically says that your heart is a little bit more efficient. And now we're getting to organ stuff. Like the brain is pretty good at burning ketones. The heart actually may be better than the brain at burning ketones. But there's
that might play into this endurance exercise thing.
We're interested in exploring it for military as well. Because there's a ton of opportunities here. We just, there's limited time and limited funding.
Yep.
So one more question here, and then we can wrap it up. But maybe as a best practice, is it good to load electrolytes before starting a hike?
Good question.
Load.
Is it good to take a bunch of electrolytes before I'm going hiking?
Good to take a bunch.
Is there any harm in doing that?
Will you just pee them out?
In some cases, what is load? Like,
Right.
Rich,
It depends.
Rich, I'm going hiking. Should I take a bunch of electrolytes before I go hiking?
Should I drink? Should I drink some
Yes or
Neo?
no?
So, for example, like we'll have, athletes and stuff that'll take, it's a product called the Right Stuff. It's like 2 grams of sodium. Basically, it's a ton of electrolytes, similar to a bouillon cube.
Okay, all right.
And they'll kind of, pre-workout or pre-match, pre-game, do something with, that kind of product where it's a heavy electrolyte dose. Not like Gatorade where it's,
light.
it's not grams of electrolytes. Yeah. It's like a heavy dose, and they've seen some results, and there's professional teams that are doing that are relying on this. They'll do the right stuff. They'll obviously hydrate as well. And basically all you're doing is trying to hold the water in the body a little bit better and prevent dehydration. So I'm not saying it's going to probably not going to harm you as long as you're going to also hydrate. If you're going to only eat the salt and not hydrate along the way, I wouldn't recommend that.
Sorry guys, pre-hacked bouillon cubes.
Just nom it,
Just crushing bouillon cubes in the parking lot.
Just chewing on them, yeah.
Oh, gross.
It was Kieran who did that.
That's a good question. That doesn't surprise me. All right.
We should do and give people an opportunity to do a Q&A with Dr. Rich. Anything exercise, nutrition,
Rich, you
keto.
might. Do you listen to the Joe Rogan Experience?
I've seen a couple episodes.
He has a science girl on a lot. You might be our Dr. Rhonda Patrick.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, you might be ours, Rich.
I will do my absolute best to help you guys out. I really appreciate you guys even talking.
No,
to me.
this is Rich, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Anyone who's interested. Okay, if there's a person out there and they want to get schooled on ketogenic diets or keto diets, like where should they go?
In terms of backpacking?
No,
just education.
Education. Say someone listening is like, I'm kind of interested about the ketogenic diet. Where should they go to get more information?
There's obviously some books available. I have not written any books.
I don't. I want to Google it.
Oh, you want to Google this?
Yeah, this is just like, come
YouTube.
on.
Is there any
YouTube things, or like, is it that hard to get information?
It's definitely not that hard to get information. There's good information through a couple of sources.
What are those sources?
One of them is, I guess, Verda.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, one of them. Well, it's not a conflict of interest for me.
It's not for you.
Yeah, definitely not for me.
But they're legit. So Verda Health. They
have a pretty good blog, but they're more clinically oriented. For just
there isn't like, if I'm just a person who wants to try a ketogenic diet, there's not like a go-to resource for that. It seems like something you could monetize.
I mean, there's so many that like usually we just say like, go to whatever you find that you think is reputable, and then we'll work with you along the way. We don't usually say like, this is the reliable source that we use. Okay. We usually say like, we are probably going to be your reliable source, and if you have questions, you should ask us.
Should people just check out Volek's books?
That's usually the first start for most people. Is
go to Amazon and put in Jeff Volek, and he's got a couple good.
He's got the Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, and then he's got another book that's more or less centered around athletes.
Okay.
But yeah, so those are usually our go-tos. We say like, and that seems to help a lot of people. For backpacking, I would say start with ketogenic backpacking. He's got both a book and he's got a website, and the website seems pretty good from what I could tell. Other than that, like if you're looking for like recipes and stuff, there's ruled.me. I don't know if they've changed their web address. Yeah. Ruled.me is a pretty good resource where not everything is going to, keep you in ketosis, but they have a ton, like their assortment of recipes and ideas for making food that's keto friendly is like, we've relied on that in the past.
Okay.
Cause that's, when we're coaching people, it's usually like, they don't ask for like, they ask us for the resources on like, well, what do you think on this? Or do you have any, we'll provide them scientific papers that are reliable on certain things. We don't necessarily say like, go to this website. There is an OSU website that we're starting to put together now.
Okay.
That I don't necessarily do. We have registered dietitians, but they will help kind of consult with people and work with people, whether you're patients or healthy. They will.
I guess we should shout out, just hit up a registered dietitian if you're looking for.
I would recommend, a medical professional, a dietitian, someone that is not myself necessarily, because most of the advice I would give you probably is, it's a liability.
All right.
But I could provide you all the, reading material you want in terms of scientific papers and that kind of thing.
I'm sure you could. All right, man. All right, Rich. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hold on.